John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave, while weep the sons of bondage whom he ventured all to save. But though he sleeps, his life was lost while struggling for the slave. His soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory,
Welcome
glory,
to War of the Rebellion, Stories of the Civil War. I am your host, Leon, and this is a reading of the history Reminiscences of the 19th Massachusetts Regiment by Captain John G. B. Adams. Chapter 4. Our First Campaign. Battle of Fair Oaks. About the middle of March, we broke camp and took up our line of march for our first campaign. We bade goodbye to our tents, which had sheltered us since we left Massachusetts, and sent them to Washington with our extra personal baggage, where I expect they are today, as we never received them again. We marched to the river, then up the towpath of the canal to Harper's Ferry, forded the Potomac at Point of Rocks, and for the first time our feet pressed the sacred soil of Virginia. We saw here the devastations of war, the ruins of the old arsenal that had been burned by the rebels, the dilapidated and vacant houses. But most interesting to us was the old engine house, where John Brown made his gallant fight. This we found filled with rebel prisoners. Truly, we said, his soul is marching on. As soon as arms were stacked, we rushed to the arsenal ruins for relics. I found an old gunlock and several other parts of muskets. These I packed in my knapsack, and the next day threw them away. With other regiments, we marched up the valley to join Banks' division, and bivouacked at Charlestown in the field where John Brown was hanged. The next morning, Company A was ordered back to Harper's Ferry for provost duty. The rest of the regiment marched on, but in a few days returned and took position on Bolivar Heights, occupying deserted houses. Captain Merritt was appointed provost marshal at the ferry, and everything was soon in military order. The company quartered in houses, the officers boarding in the town. One day, Captain Merritt, with a detail from the company, made a seizure of several barrels of whiskey and a keg of gin from the company, which were taken to a vacant store and a guard placed over them. Somehow, the keg of gin disappeared. Where it had gone, no one knew. The next day was our last in town, having been ordered to join the regiment quite early in the morning. I noticed some of the men were very happy. But as we had been called by the other companies Merritt's Sabbath schoolchildren, I thought it possible they were rehearsing for a Sabbath school concert. The increase of the spiritual manifestations told me that the cause of the inspiration must be the gin, and that it was not far away. After searching a while, I found the missing keg in the cellar. Unlike many of the men, it was nearly empty. In the midst of the séance, Captain Merritt arrived. He came to order me to have the company in line ready to move at once. When he saw the condition of some of the men, I guess he thought we had better move in ambulances. As we were going the rounds of the rooms, we met Ben Falls, perfectly sober, having just been relieved from guard. Captain Merritt, referring to the condition of the company, said, "Ben, I am astonished." "Well," said Ben, "it is not my fault. I have been on guard. But I will get just as full as the rest as soon as I can find the stuff." When the time came to march, all were in fair condition, and before we reached Bolivar Heights, as good as ever. As it was the first offense, the men were let off with a lecture from the captain. and as the opportunity was never again presented, the offense was not repeated. With Captain Devereux, who joined us at Muddy Branch, came more recruits, and the regiment was now full, Company A having had for a few days 102 enlisted men. Several of the old men were discharged, bringing us down to the required number. A fine band was attached to the regiment, and having become very well drilled in the manual, our dress parades were almost perfect, and were witnessed by nearly all the soldiers and citizens in the town. March 24th. We received marching orders. Crossing the river, we took cars at Point of Rocks for Washington, where we arrived the next day. We remained in Washington 2 days, then marched to the Navy Yard and took the old transport North America for Fortress Monroe. In no place is the life of a soldier so hard as on a transport, crowded between decks like cattle, unable to cook or even make coffee. They must subsist on what rations are issued and drink the water from the casks. The crews are always liberally supplied with miserable whiskey, which they sell at a high price to those who will buy. And a few men are always found in every regiment, who will get drunk if they have a chance. On shore the guardhouse can be resorted to, but on board ship there is no relief from this unbearable nuisance. I do not want it understood that drunkenness was general in the army, for many men went through the war without touching liquor, and in my 4 years' experience, I never saw an officer or enlisted man intoxicated when going into battle. I believe that what was true during the war has been true since, and that in no organization, not temperance, can be found so many total abstainers to the number of men as can be found in the ranks of the Grand Army of the Republic. Our trip down the Potomac was pleasant, but soon after leaving the river a sudden storm struck us. Our old craft leaked badly, and we feared we should be swamped. The captain dared not continue, and put back to Point Lookout. Here we found a deserted hotel and several cottages. We did not stop to register, but took possession of the rooms and passed a comfortable night. Next morning we re-embarked, and reached Fortress Monroe during the night. The following day we landed and marched to Hampton, where we found the Army of the Potomac awaiting the arrival of our division. We encamped here about 2 weeks, quartered in Sibley's tents, and Sibley tents. We were not required to drill often, and the time was pleasantly passed in visiting the several Massachusetts regiments in the Army. Early in April, the Grand Army of the Potomac moved towards Yorktown. It was a Grand Army, every regiment having its full quota. The experience of the previous months had made them reliable as soldiers. Incompetent officers and disabled men had been discharged, and those now on duty were filled with patriotic enthusiasm. They only desired a chance to fight, clear up the war, and go home. Every man had confidence in General McClellan, and almost believed that he was sent by the Lord to lead us to victory. Whenever he appeared, every head was uncovered, and every voice raised in loud hurrahs. We marched 2 days, and encamped about 2 miles from the enemy's works before Yorktown. We pitched our shelter tents for the first time, and began army life in earnest. Our rations were served to us uncooked, and company cooks ordered to the ranks. A company cook is a peculiar being. He generally knows less about cooking than any man in the company. Not being able to learn the drill, and too dirty to appear on inspection, he is sent to the cookhouse to get him out of the ranks. We were not sorry when the cookhouse was abolished. The first day after our arrival, the 19th and 20th Massachusetts regiments, under command of General Dana, were ordered to reconnoiter the enemy's works. We discovered a fortification near Wynn's Mill, and the 19th was ordered to march through a piece of woods, then along the front and discern its extent. We did this under a sharp fire of musketry. It was not our intention to attack, but as Company E, commanded by the brave but impulsive Captain Mahoney, was fired upon, he ordered the men to charge the works, and would have done so, had not Colonel Hinks recalled him. Like a true Irishman that he was, he did not propose to be fired upon and not fight. The regiment behaved splendidly under fire. When the musketry was the hottest, the clear voice of Colonel Hinks was heard. "Change front. Forward on first company," was the order, and it was executed as correctly as on drill. We lost the first man killed in this skirmish, Andrew Fountain, of Company D. Captain Wass and several of Company K were wounded. We went into camp and began to erect fortifications. For nearly a month we were engaged in that work, besides building corduroy roads and doing picket duty. While on picket, William Morgan was badly wounded by a piece of shell. He was the first man wounded in Company A. Our camp was located in a swamp. The rain was almost constant, and the ground like a sponge. Sickness prevailed, to an alarming extent. It was not an uncommon thing to march half of the company to sick call, but not all who went were sick. Active service had tired some who, when we were in camp in Maryland, were anxious to fight, and were constantly grumbling because we were not ordered in. Picket duty under fire had given these few the shell fever. Loss of voice was the trouble with many, caused by severe colds. One day I marched my squad of invalids to the hospital tent. With them was one of the loudest talking men in the company. But that morning he could only whisper. After the doctor had examined them all, he gave me the list of excused, and my voiceless comrade was not down. "Hasn't he excused me?" said B. "No," was my reply, in a voice that could be heard a quarter of a mile. "Damn him! I am the sickest man in the company," was his indignant answer. But he went on duty just the same, and never again answered sick call until wounded. Such cases were the exception, however, and every day the number grew less as our men were ordered back to General Hospital. The works we were erecting were of the strongest kind, as it was intended to besiege Yorktown, and the heaviest guns were mounted for that purpose. Sunday morning, May 4th, found the regiment on picket duty. It had been a lively night, as the shelling had been constant. Lieutenant Hume, in charge of an outpost, believed that the rebels had left the works in his front. Sending his opinion back to the commanding officer, he started to cross the field. No gun was fired, and he continued on. The regiment was then ordered forward double quick, as others had seen Lieutenant Hume and were anxious to be the first in the works. But the 19th could run either to the front or rear, and our flags were the first to float from the fortifications. We found the portholes filled with Quaker guns, logs of wood. Men of straw were stationed as gunners. Every indication of a hasty retreat was shown, as in the camps in the rear of the works we found round fires and breakfast smoking hot, which we eagerly disposed of. We also found letters ready for mailing, which went by northern mail instead of southern, as we sent them home. We marched back to our old camp, packed up, and Monday morning in a drenching rain marched from Wynn's Mill to Yorktown. We were on the road all night, and only made 3 miles. The mud was knee-deep. We could not go out of line as the ground was full of torpedoes. Yet, and all our misery, Company A started one of our old camp songs, which was taken up by the other companies in the regiment, then by other regiments in the brigade, and soon the entire army was singing. This continued nearly all night. The next day, we took steamers, and at night arrived at West Point. We remained on board until morning, then landed, and finding our forces engaged, we were ordered to support Captain Porter, 1st Massachusetts Battery. At West Point, we saw a feature that we never saw before, or at any other time during the war. It was a human telegraph. A line of men was deployed some 20 feet apart, and extended from the line of battle to headquarters. The men at the front would start the message, and it would be repeated by each turning the head to the rear as he spoke. One message I remember: "Send a man to take Daniel Webster's place." We supposed Daniel had been shot, but if a man was wanted to fill the place of our lamented Daniel Webster, we did not think Company A could spare the man. After a sharp fight, the rebels fell back, and we began to march up the peninsula. The condition of the roads was such that we halted more than we marched. But at last we reached the banks of the Chickahominy River, and were ordered on picket between Bottom and Grapevine bridges. Saturday, May 31st, the Battle of Fair Oaks began. We were not relieved from picket until Sunday morning. When we were ordered to the front, here we were marched from right to left and left to right, constantly under fire, but not really engaged. We were at times passing over portions of the field that had been held by the rebels, and the ground was strewn with the dead and wounded. When the battle ended, we were ordered on picket, where we remained 10 days. Having a brush with the rebel pickets every day, we were then given a few days' rest and ordered to the front, where we threw up a line of works and remained there while the army held the advanced position. On the 25th of June, General Hooker asked for 1 regiment from Sumner's Corps to assist in the attack on the rebel lines in our front. The 19th was selected. We advanced in front of our entrenchments and were soon hotly engaged, led on by our gallant colonel. We soon had the rebels in full retreat, and had the army advanced at that time, I am confident we could have marched into Richmond in 5 hours, as we were only a few miles from the city. Just as we were ready to make the final charge, an aide came to Colonel Hinks and said, "You were ordered to fall back." "What for?" said the colonel. "Don't you see we got them on the run?" But the order was peremptory. And back we went. Our loss was very heavy for the short time engaged. Lieutenant Warner of Company H and several men were killed. Lieutenant J. H. Rice, Sergeant Samuel H. Smith, William R. Meldon, Benjamin Jellison, and others, in all about 60, badly wounded. While we had been under fire nearly all the time since arriving at Yorktown, this was the first square fight in which we had been engaged. We had no chance for the use of tactics, as the woods were thick and we could see little of the enemy. But the officers and men behaved splendidly, and our only regret was to lose so many and accomplish nothing. An experience that the Army of the Potomac often had in the battles that followed. Chapter 5. Battles at Beech Orchard, Glendale, and Malvern Hill, which is what we will pick up next week. Let's hop into some show notes and get you guys out of here for your weekend. Thank you for listening, by the way. All right, so some of the things I've noticed is that several times as I've been reading and coming across Union soldiers talking about John Brown and Harper's Ferry, they talk about him almost with veneration. And also having camped in the same field where he was hung, that's pretty wild. So, moving on. It's just something I've noticed. I did want to go back and talk about one quote from this book. Our dear captain says, in no place is the life of a soldier so hard as on a transport. And I felt that in my bones. Even today, you're either crammed on a ship, a helicopter, a truck, an LAV or something, an airplane, like cattle, just like how he explains it. And it's always about delivering the firepower, to the battlefield. And any way they can, they will. And you'll never be comfortable doing it. And thinking back, I don't think I ever remember being comfortable except once, which was flying into and out on the first leg and last leg of your journey to Afghanistan, which was via an airline, which stopped off in another country, and then you have to get onto a C-130 and then fly in. So, but that was it. That's all, and I did lots. I still fondly remember being on the USS Dubuque and going downstairs, going down a hatch, down a stairs to another platoon in my company, and they had a bathroom above them that would constantly overflow, and the hatch wouldn't shut right. And so when it would overflow, just like everything from the ship would start to drip down into like their 100-degree. Oh gosh, it was awful. So, but they just lived with it because they had no choice until the doctor on ship came in and was like, "What is happening? Get out of here." So anyway, reading about the Grand Army of the Grand Army of the Potomac when it was actually grand with all of its full regiments, that just makes my heart sad. I know it's our job as infantry to fight and die in the mud, but something just is really striking to me about a fully prepared, armed, and trained army of soldiers setting out. And then by the time they come back, it's always a shell of its former self. And, it just breaks my heart because it's for what it was and then what it became. And I think McClellan had that problem. He didn't want to break any of his toys because he knew how hard it was to build it, which is why I could never be a general, because if I broke my toys, it would break my heart. And you got to be a little bit more ruthless than that as a general. Smart, but, really willing to go at it. So, all right. When he brings up his squad of invalids he's taking to the doctor, and one of the guys isn't actually sick, but is just trying to get out of duty. Man, I laughed so hard. In the Marines, we called them skaters because they were, and I knew some professional skaters, and that's because their skates were so sharp that they could skate away from any responsibility. And, oh man. So that was funny. Those guys are always in the military. And I'm sure like the Roman legionnaires had the same guys who were trying to always get out of it. But anyway, he also had a very interesting account of the battle and finding the rebels had fled with their Quaker guns. Very interesting. So far in the podcast, we haven't covered anything this early in the war. So it's really interesting to hear about. Maybe we'll do like the first Minnesota or something at some other point. And anyway, there's a lot to cover. Now, I'm going to move on to some announcements. I hope you have all seen or heard both interviews I put out over the weekend. The biography, President Garfield from Radical to Unifier by Mr. Goodyear. That is also a YouTube video with Mr. Goodyear, so you can see him talk about his book, although it's just the same recording upload. Even though I got to read the book, I'm still picking it up from my bookshelf. It is that good. And then after I'm done, I'm going to loan it out to people and be like, read this. This is great. It is such a well-written biography. And you won't put it down. You won't, I promise. So if you haven't, that comes out on July 4th. Order a copy. I'm not being paid to say that. It's just that good. I really enjoyed it. Moving on to the other interview with the Lincolns of Springfield, the musical, with composer Terence Crenay. Also on YouTube, but without any video. It's just our Zoom photos talking. He did give me access to the entire studio production discography. I have to tell you folks, go see that musical if you can. It is so good. The man is a master of his craft, and the production is being highly praised now. But I did get to listen to every single song as you would hear it there. And I am telling you, wow, there's a reason why this guy was hanging out and studying alongside the greats. He is a great musician. He is a fantastic composer. I have been to so many musicals in my life, it seems like, and this is the best one I've ever heard. And there's a couple out there that I fondly remember that gave me a different swell of feelings, but man, he really hits them. Like, I went through every emotion listening to his music, and I just, oh gosh, go see it. If you have the chance, it's playing now in Springfield, and it is playing at the Hoogland Center for the Arts at the Peggy Ryder Theater. That's in Springfield, Illinois. You can just type in the Lincolns of Springfield.com. It'll take you right to their website. You can get tickets there. I'm telling you, this biography and this musical both get the War of the Rebellion seal of approval. It was a great weekend for me. I can't complain. So, also, if you're a Civil War cosplayer or reenactor, if you attend in your costume, you get a special gift. I should have asked when he was here, but I don't know. Let's keep it a surprise. So go see it. If you can, just go. It's great. I love the music. All right. And I have just a few more announcements. I want to have a shout out to Douglas W. on Patreon. You have been my ever loyal Patreon member from the very beginning. Folks, this man has a War of the Rebellion sticker that he got at my spring.com store, Rebellion Stories. So that, of course, is in the show notes. So if you want to go check out the merch there, by all means, go take a look. All of it goes to directly just supporting the channel and helping pay for server costs and everything else. But anyway, he sent me a picture of it, and it looked great on his truck. Douglas, thank you so much. This man was supporting me on Patreon before I was even making content for Patreon members. So thank you so much. And also, we have a new volunteer infantry patron member, John T. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciated. I hope you like the content that's going to be coming out. And my last announcement is kind of awful, but the cost association with the production keep going up. Server costs and some other things that all directly result to the podcast itself. So in the new future, I know I said I wouldn't, but I'm going to have to add some ads, which sucks, I know. But patrons, don't worry, you'll have access to ad-free episodes for all time, so you'll still get to enjoy them. But I won't make that change, and I'll let you guys know when it's going to happen. And I don't think it's going to be in the next couple of weeks or anything like that. So, but with that, my friends, thank you for listening. Have a wonderful weekend. And to all of my listeners who will be celebrating, have a happy and wonderful 4th of July. Do not hold fireworks in your hands, please. Let's keep it all on our fingers. I'm backpacking into the Cascade Wilderness for several days, so I'm going to have a blast with my dog. It's going to be great. And if you would like to support the channel and the podcast, you can go to www.patreon.com/War of the Rebellion or paypal.me/Rebellion Stories. Those are both ways that you can help, or you can go to the merch store, or you can like and subscribe on YouTube, visit the website, go to the Discord. I don't have anyone on Discord yet, but if you come to my Discord, I will talk to you. So, later on Discord, I want to have movie nights where we just watch movies together and all sorts of stuff. And if you want a special role, then you'll get that on Patreon. But Discord link is in there. And if you don't know how to use it, I'll help you learn how to use it. But you can, if you want to chat with me, that's where you can chat with me. I'm on Discord every day, all day, normally in other channels where I'm talking with folks. But anyway, if you want to come talk with me, you can come talk with me in Discord. We can hang out. So link will be in the description. So with that, my friends, thank you for listening. Have a great one, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Oh, John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave, while weep the sons of bondage whom he ventured all to save. But though he sleeps, his life was lost while struggling for the slave. His soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. For his soul is marching on. John Brown was a hero, undaunted, true, and brave. And Kansas knew his valor when he fought her rights to save. And now, though the grass grows green above his grave, his soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Hallelujah, for his soul is marching on. He captured Harper's Ferry with his 19 men so few, and frightened old Virginia till she trembled through and through. They hung him for a traitor, themselves a traitorous crew, but his soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. For his soul is marching on. John Brown was John the Baptist, of the Christ we are to see. Christ who of the bondman shall the liberator be. And soon throughout the sunny South the slaves shall all be free, for his soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Hallelujah, for his soul is marching on. The conflict that he heralded, he looked from heaven to view on the army of the Union with its flag red, white, and blue. And heaven shall sing with anthems o'er the deed they mean to do, for his soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. For his soul is marching on. Soldiers of freedom, then strike while strike ye may, the death blow of oppression in a better time and way. The dawn of old John Brown has brightened into day, and his soul is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Hallelujah, for his soul is marching on.